The first duty of government is to protect our rights.
It's our job to maintain the proper role of government in what we were tasked to do.
If you really want to doge, this is how you doge. You don't vote for bad legislation that expands government. Thank you.
Now we're talking about taxpayer money, and we talk about accountability. It is their money. This isn't a government program we're actually spending on. We're actually giving it back to the people of Idaho.
There's other options for making our ballots more secure, such as using watermarks or putting holograms on the ballots.
And I think that that's what we need to look at more, is trying to get back to what we used to be, where our churches and our families took care of each other instead of relying on the state.
I asked the question rhetorically, if we gave them another $1 billion, they wouldn't be happy. Well, we've given them $2 more billion, and it's not enough.
We need to start making Idaho first. We need to start making America first.
Other states like Texas and Florida have enacted similar laws to address illegal immigration, both locally and in their communities. And Idaho has the right to protect itself when the federal government has failed to do that.
COVID presented us with quite the enigma. We didn't really know what it was or what to do, but that is no excuse to violate the rights of the citizens of the state of Idaho.
I say vote no on this and let the teachers teach and quit bringing in coaches to teach the teachers to teach, and let's get education going again in Idaho.
I don't know what's coming after this current administration for the feds, and we need this law because our federal laws on immigration have failed.
Mr. President, I think it's incumbent upon us to allow parents to use their hard-earned dollars to provide what's best for their children.
If I was looking at a business and I was looking at these figures, there would be heads rolling because this is unsustainable.
My concern is that the resilience of Idahoans who believe in self-reliance and self-responsibility will be eroded.
We need to be protecting our First Amendment rights, not inventing ways to slowly chip away at them.
The First Amendment and our freedom of religion, freedom of speech are our first liberties. They are so important. We don't have the rest without them.
Yeah, watch it.
Come on, guys.
Well, can you hear me? Good. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? I don't know. Okay, I don't know what happened to the music. That's a fun. Hey, there it is. Okay, well, we missed out on the big music at the moment, but it happens. It's live, things happen live. Welcome, everybody. It's Matt Edwards here, Idaho Signal. It's January 23, 2026, and I'm so glad you are with us. Reminder, if you're watching us on YouTube, Rumble, X, or whatever, be sure you're following. Click the follow button, click the alert button so you know exactly when we go live. If you are watching us later in the day, as many of you, most of you do, most of you are not here live. I thank you again for watching, and I ask you to please share the program. It has been a fun first 2 weeks of the legislative session down in Boise. We're broadcasting up in North Idaho, but we'll be down there soon. We wanted to go over a few things today. It was a big day in the Idaho Supreme Court as the school choice tax credit lawsuit was being heard and argued before the Idaho Supreme Court. We will have a bunch of clips. We'll have some analysis on that later in the program. But first, we're going to invite our good Senator Glenita Zeiderveld onto the program here in just oh, there she is. Good morning, good Senator. It's nice to see you. I have just all of this questions to bombard you with regarding what's been going on in JFAC, because we had a lot of folks show up, during the first couple of weeks. You get inundated with all the numbers, all the requests, or not necessarily requests yet, but you start to get to see what everybody's presenting you, the governor's office, the education office, Medicaid, and so forth. And you're at the tip of the spear when it comes to making sure we spend our money wisely and fiscally, rooting out fraud, trying to find areas where we can improve. And so I wanted to just get your initial reaction of what you heard and some of the big red flags that may have been popped up on your from your perspective. So welcome to the program. I want to let you hit it away. What was your first reaction?
Well, thank you, Matt. And it's been a while since I've been on. So I look forward to sharing the basically 9 days of JFAC. We didn't have any committees today, get a little long weekend there. And so we have jumped right in with revenue forecasts and then a bunch of presentations from education, the governor, health and welfare. Just a lot of numbers coming at us. And this year is particularly different, excuse me, particularly difficult because of the deficit that we have entered in with. And this is something I've been warning people since my freshman year, seeing the numbers that we had, that our revenue was so dependent on the federal to pay a lot of our bills. And I kept asking, what are we going to do when the federal goes away? We can't keep doing this and keep going into debt. And so now this year, we're seeing some of those consequences of being so dependent on the federal government. And so with education and the governor and with health and welfare, there's going to be some major cuts. Those are the two biggest area expenditures we have, is health and welfare and education. And so we're going to just dig in deep. We have a new JFAC team. There's a couple new members on there, and a new co-chair, Representative Josh Tanner. And then we also have Representative Chris Bruce and Kyle Harris, which changes the dynamics of our JFAC team. And so I'm very encouraged by that. They are hard workers, and we're going to get to go in there and dig deep on some of these issues and see where we can find the waste, the fraud, the abuse, and go from there.
Yeah, one of the things, and we talked briefly offline real quick, you had reminded me of this. Earlier in the week, we did have Representative Harris on, and he talked about this funding formula and how some districts have been abusing it or taking advantage of it by squirreling away millions and millions of dollars. Can you walk us through a little bit of what you've found on that?
So I knew that we used to call them rainy day funds, and now they're called fund balances, where the schools can take 5%. It's a statute, 33801. I wrote it down so I would get it correct. And that statute allows for them to take 5% and put into this fund for any kind of unforeseen emergencies, downfalls, but they can't exceed that. And then any of that revenue that they put away, then the next year, it basically goes back into the general to help with funding what's going on with that. Well, there was an article that came out from the Idaho Ed News, and it was talking about how there's $712 million in all of these fund balances. And a lot of them were increasing, individually 14%, it was way above the 5%. And the total amount over the 5 years was 62% above what actually should be in those funds. And so we kind of brought that up, because basically going into a deficit, where can they start using some of those funds to help us get through these difficult times, so that way they don't have to cut back on the actual education of the children in the classroom.
Right.
And so I think that Kyle Harris, Representative Harris, will actually, he was talking about really digging deep in that. He is in that work group. And so and I'm in the work group of health and welfare. And so, but we come together, but they kind of divide us up so that we can all do deep dives in certain different areas. But there's many things that we can do to kind of get us through this difficult time that we're dealing with.
Yeah, and I want to touch real briefly on that, on the fact that, your Democrat colleagues all week long, they've seemed to just be, raising the issue. Well, maybe we should pause the tax breaks. Maybe we should raise taxes. Maybe we should bring in more money. And I mean, you're of the mind that no. We don't need to do that. We need to cut the waste and cut the fraud and stuff. So with that, what's your reaction to that? And what do you see in health and welfare? You mentioned already, the Medicaid part, but I mean, what can we just go right at?
Well, part of yes, over here, I sit right next to a couple of the Democrats that are on the JFAC, and
bless
we
your
have
heart.
some good conversations. There's some good debate there, but their thing is to always expand the taxes, and we don't want to cut any programs. And we've had discussions because they're so worried about the teachers, and I keep reminding them that the teachers are not the only ones out there we should be concerned about. There's a lot of people that are not on that do not get paid for by the government. There's a lot of people out there that are self-employed. They don't get any kind of government assistance at all. And they are also experiencing the inflation and the difficulties. They are already cutting back or maybe working 2 jobs. And he says, we need to make sure that we remember them as well, not just those, the teachers or the health and welfare that are getting a paycheck from the government. And so there's a lot of discussions there. But what we are going to have to look at is we're looking to hopefully repeal the Medicaid expansion. And so, but people are so I've been getting 100 of emails that don't take away our Medicaid, and people don't understand. And I was wanting to kind of run over that real quick. There's 3 areas of Medicaid. We have basically your basic Medicaid. We have your enhanced plan of Medicaid, and then you have your expansion. So the other 2 have been in place for a very long time, and that's where a lot of your elderly, your senior citizens, a lot are on those 2 plans. The expansion is the one that we're looking to cut back on because the expansion is the one that is taking away from those that need to be on those programs. We are funding that. And so in those 3 programs, the basic and the enhanced plan, there's 70% funded by the federal and 30% funded by the state. On the expansion one, it is 90 federal and 10% state. And so when we're looking at a $38 trillion deficit in our federal government, yeah, they're going to start making some cuts, and that those programs, they're going to start cutting back, but our state revenue cannot afford to go and make up those cuts. When our revenue is $5.5 billion estimated, and then our outgo, including the continuous spending that we really don't vote on, is not 14 billion, it's actually 16 billion. So we don't have that revenue of the state to make up any of those federal programs when they go away. We're not even close to being able to cover those. And those are the decisions that we're going to have to make.
Yeah. Well, I want to go back again to what you said about, receiving emails from folks. Are you receiving emails and concern from folks that you mentioned that are on the basic and the enhanced, the sort of the elderly or the folks that have, disabled children or those types of things that we kind of expect to be on Medicaid, versus people writing you saying, no, I don't want to work 40 hours a week and get off Medicaid, because that seems to be the theme, right? That there's able-bodied people that if they just worked more hours or they just got back into the workforce, they wouldn't qualify for the Medicaid expansion anymore, but they most likely have a job or have extra funds to purchase or help get subsidy from their employer for health coverage and insurance, correct?
Correct. So a lot of the emails are from those parents that have autistic or severely disabled children.
And so you're not looking to cut their services. You're looking to actually help them.
Right, because we're going to take away what's draining the money from those programs and taking that away and basically sending those who have been on these programs that have the ability to work to basically go find their own program or maybe find a job that includes health insurance. But we need to start cutting back on that expansion that is draining from the other 2 Medicaid programs that is designed to help the elderly and the severely disabled.
Okay, good. So folks, do not fall for these lies out there. This is the whole point of this is to try and keep you folks, the ones that actually need it, to keep those funds solvent so that you have the ability to still get the help that you need. So this is actually going to try and help you. So don't fall for that stuff. I don't understand the mentality of the left where they just want a whole society that's completely dependent upon the government, and they just Okay. Anyway, I don't want to waste
Yeah.
time on
Well,
that.
it's funny because I make a joke all the time that I feel like the federal government's like a drug dealer. It's like, hey, try this program. You're gonna love it. The first one's on me,
Yes.
And then
Can I get another program? Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Very good. You're okay. So you're diving. We know you're always diving into this stuff. And you're always putting out long Substacks and articles and letting people dive into that stuff. We only have a couple more minutes, but I want to know what outside of JFAC, what else are you working on? What are you focused on? And what do we need people to rally behind?
Okay, so I'm going to try on the Senate if we can get it to that far on the grocery tax repeal bill to give that some kind of relief to our constituents. We'll see how that goes. We kind of know all the drama with all of that, and then I'm also going to be bringing back a bill about the harmful materials that are in our school libraries and our libraries, and just kind of bring it in where there's a little bit more teeth to that, because we have brought a bill forth, and again, there's nothing that's really being done about that. So we're looking into doing that as well. We'll see how far we get that. It is an election year, so we'll see what leadership will, and the chairman of the committees will basically allow to be heard. So there's always that hill to overcome. And so that's some of the things I'm working on, but mostly I'm looking into digging deep into the budget. And then in health and welfare, that's the other committee that I'm on. Hopefully we can bring something forth where we can repeal the expansion and bring some relief there. That would help us with a lot of things that we're dealing with.
Absolutely.
And yeah, so that's kind of the thing. And on the Senate side, our Health and Welfare Committee, it's a strong committee. We have about 5 strong conservatives, and the other ones that are on there. I think that we can get a lot done, because we only have one Democrat that's on that committee, and the rest of us are pretty conservative. So we'll see what we can get through. We had Senator Linney, Senator Kaiser, myself, Senator Shippey. We were able to basically kill some of the rules that were increasing the fees on different things this last week. And so we do have the ability to hopefully make some difference in those committees.
Yeah, that's great news. Great to hear.
Yeah.
We did have, I believe we had your Substack up there. How can people get to your Substack, and where else can they follow you, Senator?
Okay, so yeah, if you just go to glenita.com, that's my website. Well, that'll take you to every social media avenue that I have. I do try to put out a Substack once a week, trying to keep everybody updated on what's going on. And just basically wanting to hear from them and keep them engaged and informed. I think that's where we're going to have the biggest fix for all of our issues, is an involved and educated citizens that are reaching out to their representatives. And I also, before we go, I think it's really important, and people don't realize that a lot of things that we see, they can see. And I wanted to bring up that the legislature, Idaho, or .idaho.gov. If you go to the website there, if you want to see what we're dealing with on the budgets, they put a new tab at the very top, and it's called the Base Budget Dashboard. That will help you dig in to see what we've been funding, where we're at. And so when you see with your own eyes, it's better. That's a new tab that we put there to have citizens be informed. And then also, if they go over to the tab that says Budget Info, and then tab on that, then there's called the budget book. The budget book, you will see everything I see this year in that budget book. Every single page that is in my budget book is on that website. And I really think it's important for people to see what's going on and not get misinformation, and they can see with their own eyes. And I know it's like 871 pages on the budget book, but you can go in and pick something you're interested in, and you can help us Doge. If you see something in there, you can reach out to one of the JFAC members and help us Doge that, because we are running full steam ahead and it gets a little overwhelming. And so if you're looking at that budget book, then and reading it and something sticks out to you, bring it to our attention so that we can ask questions or get more information on that topic.
Excellent point. Yes, perfect. Yeah, and you don't have to read the whole thing. Pick a topic, dive into it. I'm sure you'll find something. Senator Zeiderveld, thank you so much for joining us. Great information out there. Be sure to Glenita.com. I mean, she's the only human in the world with the name Glenita. You secure the domain. That's fantastic.
Well, there's actually two of us now. My friend actually named her little girl Glenita. So.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, well,
so there's two.
Hopefully you'll leave her the URL in your will. All
That's
right. All right, Senator. Good to see you. God bless.
Okay.
Have a good weekend.
All right. Thank you, Matt. Bye.
All right. Oh, very good, folks. Excellent. That is, I mean, great points there, folks. Go over to that website and look up your, look up just your issue and just dive into the budget there and see what you can find. Excellent information. All right. So this morning, jam-packed in the Idaho Supreme Court, where the case against the school choice tax credit that went into effect this year. We had Chris Cargill from the Mountain State Policy Center on earlier this week break the news that, at least at the time, I forget what the number was, but it was something like, 7,300 students, over 4,500 families. I'm sure that's multiplied by now, have signed up for this school choice tax credit. And if you have been living in a cave for a while and don't know exactly what this is, well, let's bring in Brian Allman here to just give us a quick rundown. What is the school choice tax credit, and what brought us to the point that we are now in court this morning?
Good to be here, Matt. So the school choice, parental choice tax credit was passed last year by the legislature in House Bill 93. And this was the latest attempt. They tried several times to do some sort of school choice where money can follow the student. Contrary to what you hear from the Democrats, this is not a voucher. A voucher is when the government gives you essentially a coupon worth some money that you can then take to a private school and say, enroll your child there, and then the government pays the private school. This is not a voucher. This is where parents can enroll their children in private schools or do homeschooling and buy curricula, books, materials, hire tutors, pay a co-op, all sorts of options. And then after the fact, when they file their taxes, parents can then go and claim up to $5,000 in expenses per student. If the student's tuition is $10,000 a year, they can only claim up to $5,000. If the student's tuition is only $1,000 or the materials for homeschooling is only $500, they can only claim that much. So it's up to your expenses. It is a refundable tax credit, which means you can get back more than you paid in taxes, but only up to that number that you actually spent. So that is the parental choice tax credit. For this year, they capped the total amount at $50 million, which means once that is exhausted, then they're done. So some people who apply late might not actually get the credit this year. They prioritize those who are under 300% of the federal poverty line, as well as first come, first serve. And then in future years, those who've had it in the past will be put to the head of the list to get it in the future, so that you can't, they don't want somebody enrolling their child in a private school, getting the tax credit, and then worrying that next year maybe they won't get it. Once they're in there, they're supposed to be in.
Or as Representative Mickelson said, worried that they'll dump them back into the public school and commit some sort of fraud. We'll get to that in a minute. But okay, so excellent outlaying where we are. And so then the left, of course, then went bananas and coalesced, got together with a bunch of the lefty progressives in the Republican Party as well, and decided to file this lawsuit not too long ago, and it's right here in the Supreme Court this morning with some of the arguments. So we have a bunch of clips we want to share. I don't know where we want to start, but what has been your initial reaction to what we saw in the court this morning?
Well, just by way of a quick background, they did file late. They didn't file right after the law was passed or right after it went into effect in July. They waited a little bit. And then the Supreme Court set the date for oral arguments today, which is interesting because this is just over a week after the portal opened up to start applying for the tax credit. So thousands of families have already applied. You mentioned Chris Cargill, Mountain State's Policy Center. He said that as of, I want to say Wednesday, there were 3,600 families that applied. This morning during 46. Oral arguments, some of the attorneys mentioned that nearly 5,000. So it's obviously popular. People are wanting it. People are getting ready. And the question is, will the Supreme Court pull the rug out from under parents who have applied and say, sorry, nope, you can't have this? My first impressions of watching the oral arguments this morning is that that's probably not going to happen. I felt that the justices were very skeptical of the petitioner's arguments. What was interesting is that they did not base their case on the religious aspect. We've been talking about the Blaine Amendment, how it's ostensibly prevents public money from going to sectarian or religious, institutions, entities. But the Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court, has said that if you offer something to one group, you cannot then discriminate against Christian or other religious groups. However, that's not even their argument. Their argument is that the Constitution mandates, the Idaho Constitution mandates that the legislature provide for a uniform system of free and public schools. And they say that means that if you're doing that, you cannot do anything else. You cannot have a tax credit that allows for parents to go to another system of school, whether it's homeschooling or private school or whatever. I felt that the justices were very skeptical of that argument, and I would be surprised at this point if they overturned the law.
Yeah, it was very interesting. We have a couple of clips here where they mentioned that. Let's watch this first one. Justice, do we call them justices at this point, or are they still judges?
Yes. Justice.
They're justices? All right. Justice Zahn talked about this with one of the lawyers on one system versus a system. Let's watch that.
Look at the plain language, and the plain language says it's one system funded by public funds.
Well, the plain language says it's a system, and I'm struggling with your argument because at the time the founders wrote and the state adopted our Constitution, Idaho's territorial statutes recognized that there were public schools and there were private schools. And I believe the year after or around that time that they adopted the Constitution, they also recognized parochial schools. So the founders, being aware that we had at least 3 kinds of schools, only one of which was public, if they intended to say the state could only appropriate money to public schools, why wouldn't they use one system of public schools as opposed to some other states have a provision in their Constitution that is specific. You can only appropriate public monies to public schools. We don't have any of that. And so I'm struggling with your argument that use of a system, a duty to create a system of public schools, automatically means that's the only system.
Yeah, very interesting, Brian. This is an argument that I believe I recall several senators and representatives make, a few sessions ago when trying to justify, an alternative to this system of public schools. What was your take on that?
I agree. It has been interesting to watch that debate over the years, and especially in relation to this case, is there seems to be a sense of entitlement with people who are really supportive of the public school system, or people who make their living in the public school system, that this is the only one we can have. They grudgingly accept that some children will go to private schools or even charter schools. Years ago, there was a big fight over allowing charter schools, which were outside of the control of the existing public school establishment, but they're still public. And any time that control is threatened, that the funding is threatened, that you get very strong reactions. So really, they're just taking that same argument and saying that the Constitution says we have to have this free, uniform system of public schools, and we can't have anything else. And I don't think that's a very strong one. Later on, the lawyers arguing for the state, for the legislature on this, pointed out that California's Constitution actually does have a clause saying that no public money shall ever go to a religious school, which isn't even all public schools or all private schools.
Correct. Yeah.
And the attorney pointed out that that's probably what the petitioners wish our Constitution said, but it's not what it actually says.
Right. Yeah. We have another clip from Justice Zahn here. Let's watch that.
I believe that when it says a system, that's the maximum singular standard for public funding.
But the context of Article 9, Section 2 is different, isn't it? You can't just take a out of context. The general supervision of the state educational institutions and public school system of the state of Idaho shall be vested in a state board of education. You have to read it all together, right? The supervision of state educational institutions is vested in a state board of education, one. Whereas Section 1, Article 9, Section 1 is different. It talks about it shall be the duty of the legislature of Idaho to establish and maintain a general, uniform, and thorough system of public, free, common schools. You have to establish one. It doesn't mean you are prevented. I don't see anything in that section that says you can't use state funds for anything else education related that may not be the system of public, free, common schools.
Yeah, very interesting. Going back and looking at other verbiage and how they use the word "a system" or "a board," these are the types of arguments that belong in court. This is if you're going to write legislation, you need to write it the way that it's intended. And I think did we already see the clip where she talked about the founders? Was that in the previous clip about the founders intended to have? We had all three types of public schools already. So yeah, we already watched that clip. I found that argument there again fascinating. I do want to move on so we have time before the break. There was an interesting exchange. We'll watch that one later. The benefits part of it. Now you could say about how like the where should state benefits go, and Justice Brody had an interesting, this was an interesting clip here. Let's watch that.
Some of the opening remarks from the petitioner side, where they talk about our state benefits as a whole from having an educated population. So the fact that the program may be available only to, to a smaller group of students is immaterial, that we benefit from those students being well educated in whatever form the parents deem is appropriate for those particular children.
I think that's exactly right too, Your Honor. And this goes back to Article 9, Section 1 in the sense that it talks about the form of the stability of our Republican form of government depends on the intelligence of our citizenry, and having a more intelligent and more educated citizenry is a benefit to everybody. And these are the future leaders of our state, and these people are going to do great things in their community. And so it is a benefit to everyone.
Yeah, Brian, and that's what we're talking about when we talk about benefits here, that the benefits to our society by using these public dollars in this fashion it's also in our Constitution. We need to raise intelligent people in order to preserve our republic. Isn't that right?
Of course. I mean, that's you read the full context of the Constitution where it mandates that free public school system. Why does it, say that? It's because, the stability of our Republican system of government depends on having educated citizens. And of course, the government's spending money on all sorts of things, and we can argue about whether or not it should spend on this thing or that thing, but it has all these different benefits. And they go into that in the argument about, even though only a minority of students might take advantage of this tax credit, well, there are other programs like WIC, like, food stamps, like, different welfare programs, different tax credits that go to different things. I mean, we all get the grocery tax credit, but that's not, nobody's ever accused that of establishing a alternate system of grocery stores. So, the government's, choosing various reasons to give tax credits or deductions or, straight up cash payments, whatever. And so this is, you can argue about the merits, but I don't think you can say that this is against the Constitution. No. And again, it's the benefit, the state saw the need to we at least need to have a system of free public schools, so that way we can at least ensure, at the base level, that we will be producing students and citizenry that will be able to be intelligent enough to preserve our republic. The issue we're up against today is the reason why there's such a huge demand to get out of this public school system. And sure, Idaho may be better than Missouri, maybe better than Mississippi, maybe better than New York in terms of the curriculum and the type of people that are coming out of those schools. But at the base level, our schools they're not performing to that level that parents think that they should be. So
there's another system out there, and it's not even just a system. I don't know if we have the clip, but they talked about how that we're not propping up another system because the system is so diverse outside of the public school system. Like we've mentioned before, you've got homeschooling, you've got private schools, you got parochial schools, you got learning pods, you got all sorts of different ways that there's not really a system, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just allowing more options outside of the system. And I don't think the writers of the state constitution, would have prohibited that. And essentially, and the justices even said this, which is pretty damning, that the petitioners want to rewrite the Constitution in order to make it say what they want it to say to prevent something that they don't want to happen.
Right. And we know the way to do that is you run a bill or a resolution. You have to get a 2/3 vote, and then you put it to the people. And that's exactly what we're trying to do with the Blaine Amendment, which, like we mentioned, isn't really being referred to here as a defense or as an accusation against what's going on here. But that's exactly what you need to do. So let's remind people right now about the Blaine, because we're going to take a quick break. But go to Blaine.idahopetitions.com to sign the petition to help repeal the Blaine Amendment. While we're on this topic, there's the QR code in the corner as well. Yep, that's it, and it'll take you right there to sign that petition. Brian, we're going to keep you over for over the break here. We got a bunch of more clips to share with you from the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court's hearing of the case, the argument before them today about the school choice tax credit. And so we will take that break right now, and we'll come back on the other side and do that. So go ahead, guys. Just cut to a break.
And I think people really think that what's good for Micron is good for Idaho. What's good for Albertsons is good for Idaho. Especially when you get into politics, you end up spending a lot of time with lobbyists, with business leaders, with the rich and powerful donors. I think it does become a bit of a bubble.
Idaho is the dirt under your fingernails after an honest day's work. Idaho is the hug around your neck when your daughter spells her first word. Idaho is the written word of the law, steadfast and impartial, guarding liberty for all. Idaho is the family rifle passed down, a legacy of protection and the right to stand firm. Idaho is the echo of your own voice, unshaken and free, standing tall among the world's silenced. Idaho is the home that's built to weather storms, not empty wallets. Idaho is the quiet trust between a patient and healer, unbroken and sacred. Idaho is the hymn carried by the Spirit, gathering neighbors together in faith and purpose. Idaho is the laughter around a campfire, a family's bond growing stronger with every word. Idaho is the pioneer's will, firm and clear. We govern ourselves, free and unbound. Idaho is what America was. Let's keep it that way. Ask your legislator to sign the Citizens Alliance of Idaho pledge to preserve our shared values. We ride together.
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. I got the American Smoke Company's salts out. The smoked salts, folks. This is smoked salts right here. Those are the flavors. You can head over to americansmokeco.com and check out these smoked salts. This is an American Pacific Ocean sea salt. It's a very coarse sea salt. And what they do is they smoke this with the variety of wood here. And this one here in my hand is the mesquite. And they smoked it for 10 hours. And I've used this one quite a bit as well. The last time I used it was on a nice tri-tip. I just covered the entire thing with salt and just let it sit overnight for a good 12 to 15 hours overnight. And then the next day, I threw on some other seasonings on it, and threw it on the grill, and cooked it for about an hour or so. Tri-tip doesn't take that long, and the flavor you get, I mean, like you cook that bad boy up. You don't have to tend to your meat for like 16 hours waiting for it to hit temp. To get that good smoky flavor. All you got to do is put this salt on it, and you've got you've got a smoked flavor. It's fantastic. Head over to americansmokecode.com and check it out. All right, folks, I also want to remind you to give us a call. We want to hear you. We see your comments on the side. It's fantastic as your comments come in. But if you're watching online, but also you can leave us a voicemail. 208-402-4915 is the number to call, and leave us a voicemail, 30 seconds to a minute. Give us your name and town, and we'll play it on the air and make sure that your voice gets out there. 208-402-4915. And email us at signal@citizensallianceidaho.com. And then also idahosignal.live is the other one. I'm just trying to run through this because we've got a bunch of clips we want to get through, but you guys got to check us out at idahosignal.live. That is where you can just listen. It's like being out, if you're out on the, in the rural areas and you don't get much data, that one won't suck up your data so much. So, and then, let's bring Brian back in here. Brian, we're talking about the Supreme Court hearing this morning and the argument on this case against trying to delegitimize the school choice tax credit. There was a bunch of petitioners. We kind of went through earlier in this week. We went through all the petitioners that were on here. And there was an interesting exchange about trying to, I believe one of the justices asked, what was the question that was asked about this? Let's set up this clip.
So there was questions about standing.
Right.
Standing means, do you have a right to sue over something? Have you been harmed? And all these people, all these petitioners, Mormon Women for Ethical Government, the Idaho Education Association, the Moscow School District, Representative Mickelson, how exactly are they harmed? And that was a back and forth with the petitioner's attorney saying, how are they actually harmed? Do they actually have standing? And finally, the justice asked, if you could just pick one, who would have the best standing? And
yeah, let's watch that.
See how he answers.
So would you be specific then? Who among your petitioners thinks makes the best case? If you could only go with one, who would you go with?
Well, it'd be those organizations, Your Honor, that have mission statements and have diverted funds that otherwise would be allocated to other issues. So I think those associations and then those individuals that have filed declarations with this court who have suffered already discrimination at the hands of a system about to be installed.
I understand what you're saying, but I'm not sure I heard an answer. So which of the named petitioners do you think would, in your best day on court, you'd want to rely on?
Well, with those would be the first petitioner to protect the Constitution, the IEA, and those individuals like Ms. Morgan who have suffered discrimination.
Why not the school district?
And the school district from Moscow, yes.
So everybody? I mean, this is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous, Brian. So then, I think Mueller later put a finer point on it by all these different people on this petition, kind of like just not knocking him down, especially Representative Mickelson. Let's watch that clip.
There's a variety of petitioners you've added to this that seem to have a very weak, if non-existent, claim to standing. You're asking us to find standing based on someone being a former state superintendent, based upon someone being a legislator that voted against this, someone being a grandparent. Is that a Pandora's box that this court should open? Do we seriously want to allow legislators that voted against a piece of legislation to have standing to challenge it in every instance? Or the fact that someone was a former state official, that automatically gives them standing to criticize future legislation? It just seems to me that you've added a lot of unnecessary petitioners to this case that actually weakens your standing argument.
I think we alluded to that before too, Brian. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like if you I don't know, you have a paper due in school and you figure the longer it is, the better chance that your teacher will give you a good grade. So you just keep adding more and more and more and more and more to it. But eventually at some point you are weakening your case, as the justice said there. Putting people on there, again, standing means you've been injured by it. How have any of these people been injured by the parental choice tax credit? It doesn't even go into effect until this year. It was only just last week that parents were able to start applying for it. The money was appropriated completely separately. $50 million came out just of legislative appropriations. It was not taken from the public schools. The only reason the public school budget might go down because of this is if children leave the system. And I don't think the petitioners are prepared to argue that children leaving the system is unconstitutional, because that's its own Pandora's box.
Yeah, and I was just looking to see if I had the argument printed out here. I guess I didn't. I must have had it on my computer. But I remember reading some of the people that were like aggrieved, and they're like, oh, this'll make my class sizes, oh, this'll do this, and it's like, well, none of those things, like you just said, how could we know? None of these things have happened yet. You're just like presuming, they really got ahead of their skis on this one, absolutely. And the arguments, especially from Stephanie Mickelson, Representative Mickelson, like it's just like everybody was just so pearl clutching that this dare would happen, that she had to like sign on to a lawsuit because she lost the vote in the legislature. And I believe yesterday she even mentioned, we played a clip where she asked Representative Price, when talking about the Blaine Amendment, repealing the Blaine Amendment, and how it conflicts with the reason to repeal the Blaine Amendment is because it conflicts with the U.S. Constitution's First Amendment. And so because she cited the Blaine Amendment in her case here, and she asks Representative Price, how does that conflict again? Because it's not how it was explained to me. Do we have that clip? You have that? Let's watch that.
Clause, and there are several court cases, including one in Idaho, that has upheld the Establishment Clause over our Blaine Amendment.
Any further questions? Representative Bingham.
Chairman.
Oh yeah, it was right before
Chairman
that.
Crane and
Right before
when
that,
they choose to.
She asked the question. You're going to scrub through it. Scrub back a little bit. Yeah, there she is.
Vote on this.
Or discussion on that motion. Representative Mickelson.
Mr. Chairman and Representative Price, I just was wondering if you could tell me really quick before we vote on this, how our Blaine Amendment and the U.S. Constitution, how they're contradicting each other, or how it is that we lose, because I didn't understand it that way. So I just kind of like to understand that before we vote on it.
Representative Price.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr.
She has a bad lawyer, Brian. She has a bad lawyer in this case, because she cites that in her argument in this case before the Supreme Court. And so, I mean, what's going on here? That lawyer, I don't want to denigrate him. I'm sure he's a fine lawyer, but I think he knew he didn't have a leg to stand on.
Well, the U.S. Supreme Court has already held that the Blaine Amendment cannot prevent monies that are made available to one group to be denied to groups just because they are religious in nature. And, Representative Mickelson may disagree with that. She may, disagree with that interpretation, but that is what the U.S. Supreme Court has held in multiple cases over the last 5-6 years, which is why our Blaine Amendment is basically dead in the water already. So we may as well just get rid of it. I try to give everybody the benefit of the doubt. I really do. Representative Mickelson seems very smug here. Like, I know more than you, and it's a little off-putting to me. But yeah, as you said, that's not even the case that the petitioner's attorneys are making here. They didn't even include that in there because, like I said, they know that it's a dead letter at this point. So they're grasping at straws. And as Justice Mueller said, are we opening Pandora's box if we allow people to have standing to sue because they were on the losing end of a vote in the legislature and they don't like it, so they couldn't get their way on the floor? They couldn't persuade 36 representatives and 18 senators or the governor to say no to this, so they're going to try and go to a court and get 3 justices to strike it down. Lawfare,
absolute lawfare. And judging by the way these judges were asking the questions, where they were citing things in the Constitution already, it sounded like they were like, you need to convince us that this isn't working, because it felt like you guys are wasting our time here. I mean, the arguments are terrible. Like we said, we had Chris Cargill on Mountain State Policy Center and his article breaking down the 6 points of how bad these arguments are. And so we just hope now that the Supreme Court upholds this school choice tax credit law, because it's clear to everybody else who's not under the spell of the teachers unions and the big education lobby that this is a a fine program to have, a totally fine program to have, based on our Constitution.
I obviously agree, and I'm working on an article for today at Gem State Chronicle. Chris Cargill actually already posted one about his thoughts. He was in the courtroom this morning, and it's up at Mountain States. It's a good read. Talks about all the questions they asked and goes into a little more detail there. I expect them to come out fairly quickly because parents are already applying for this. In fact, we've almost probably getting very close to the $50 million limit, which means the tax commission is going to have to start figuring out, prioritizing gets, who gets to have it. I don't think the justices want to let this uncertainty linger for no reason, especially if they've already made up their minds. They'll do their due diligence and examine the arguments and discuss it, I'm sure. But I expect a decision fairly soon.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's like the Supreme Court where they have a window, or can they just issue their judgment whenever?
Whenever. Go start refreshing the list of opinions and see what pops up.
Yeah, I mean, I would love it if it was like the shortest opinion ever. It was like denied.
Well, and that's actually, real quick. That's one of the things that Cargill brings up in his article. They could go two different ways. They could rule on the constitutional matter and say your arguments are wrong. The Constitution does not forbid this, and that would set a precedent.
Right.
That would say going forward, things like this are okay. How they could also just rule on the standing and say none of these people have standing to sue, and therefore the case is dismissed. But that would leave it open for the future for people to try and find a way to sue again. So,
right.
It'll be interesting to see which direction they go there.
Yeah, and I actually think that I would, if the standing part of it is crucial to me. I think it would actually be better to say you don't have standing here. There's no aggrieved parties here. So this we're throwing this out precisely because if there's a judgment, it kind of does give a cue that you can sue. You may lose, but you can sue if you just don't like a bill. Not that it's unconstitutional, but that you just don't like it. And that kind of lawfare is actually what we don't need. I mean, how many think of all the things that we complain about the government spending money on all the time. And if you're just like, well, this is going to ruin my industry, or it's going to impede my daily life. And when I wake up in the morning, I just can't fathom thinking that my money is going towards this. So I'm going to sue. Like, I really hope the Supreme Court just throws it out and says, you have zero standing here.
Well, maybe the best possible outcome is if they throw out all the petitioners except for that coalition who wants to protect the Constitution, according to them, and then rules against them on the merits. That would kill both birds with one stone. The
best of both worlds. Okay, very, very good, Brian. All right. Well, we'll keep tabs on that, of course, and I'm sure it'll make big news everywhere when it happens. Okay, let's do some cleanup. It is Friday. We want to clean up some of the things that we had on our radar this week. The conformity bill about the taxes, and we had the big beautiful the big beautiful bill that Congress passed, Trump tax cuts and all that jazz, and Idaho has to adopt that, right, and get it into statute so we can have those benefits in our own state. Let's play the clip of Representative Ehlers in the House Revenue and Tax Committee presenting the bill.
Introduce here RS 33071. So this is our annual tax conformity bill. Normally sometimes we just change one number and roll the date forward, but because of Trump's one big beautiful bill that had 39 tax provisions in it, this is a much bigger deal this year. What this RS does is it has full conformity for going back retroactive to the calendar year 2025 and then going forward. And then by that, when I say full conformity, let me put an asterisk. Idaho is not conformed to bonus depreciation, and this also does not conform to bonus depreciation. So that's historically how we've been. This continues that. But what it does is it goes with what's now called R&E or R&D, and it does allow the back capture historically back to 2022 that the one big beautiful bill does, and then going forward doing 100% deduction. It also allows for the individuals, not just corporations, but individuals to take the tax benefits from the one big beautiful bill in the 2025 calendar year. That was important to to us, and that the taxpayers of Idaho and the citizens of Idaho get tax relief. One thing that it also does, heard a lot of concerns from members on this R&E side about the R&E deduction, which the One Big Beautiful Bill lets them take 100% in year one. And then these other credits that Idaho has, the research activities credit and the ITC, the investment tax credit. And so what the second part of the bill does, there's two sections for those codes. It walks it through, it brings in this code section so we can have the definitions, and then it says if you're going to take qualified expenses for the deduction, you can't double dip, so to speak, and use those same qualified expenses for one of those credits. There's some concern amongst the body, which is responded to in this RS. Now, it does leave the option up to the business of which one.
What I want to hear, Brian, is this stuff going to be happening this year? Oh, we lost your mic.
Yes. I believe this will be happening this year. As we talked about earlier, when the governor unveiled his budget, it only started conformity in tax year 2026, which means when you file your taxes next spring. This bill, the conformity bill itself, actually does it for 2025, which means when we file our taxes right now, we'll be able to claim things like overtime or tips or these R&D deductions that businesses can do. And that was one of the sticking points from what I heard, because there's already stuff in Idaho tax code about deducting various expenses for research and experimentation and development and such. And they wanted to avoid double dipping. So now they're saying you can pick one or the other, and whichever one works best for you, but not both. So that should take care of that. During the hearing, Representative John Gannon, a Democrat from Boise, asked questions about the fiscal note. Representative Ayler says it'll cost $155 million from revenue, which of course, you and I know that it's not costing the government. It's just the government doesn't get that money because we're keeping it as we should. It's some semantics there. Anyway, Representative Gannon was concerned that R&E deduction would cost a lot more. And as I understood it, Representative Ayler was essentially saying that we've already accounted for it, that some of the decrease in tax revenues over the past few months that had everybody so worried were because businesses were already deducting that. And so it's already baked into the revenue number that we have, so it doesn't need to be additionally noted here, as I understand it. We'll see more debate probably Monday morning in Rev and Tax. They're going to debate this bill and try and get it going as quickly as possible so that the budget folks in JFAC will have a solid number to know, okay, how much are we actually going to not have available because of this conformity? Yeah, exactly. And we already talked about how December, was like double. They made double. They brought in double what they thought they were going to through the corporate tax, but then also it just makes me realize, of course, all those rainy day funds that we talked about earlier with Senator Zeiderveld and Representative Harris that the schools are sitting on. You've got the huge mix-up when the governor vetoed the gold bill that we could have gold and precious metals, as we've seen today. Gold hit 5,000 and silver hit 100, first time ever. So, yeah, it's time to let it's pedal to the metal. Conservatives have to put pedal to the metal and just get this stuff done. All right, Brian, where can we follow you and watch for your stuff? At GemStateChronicle.com is where I live. Follow me on X at Brian Allman or at GemStateChron, that character limit. I'm working on something, just an overview of this morning's oral arguments. Yesterday I wrote about the attempt to get rid of the Commission on Hispanic Affairs. So yeah, there's all sorts of stuff going on. That's a complete other conversation, but we'll probably see that one come back. Yeah, we had so much to talk about today too. I mean, those bills yesterday that they didn't necessarily come out of DOJ, but they were talked about extensively during DOJ, the task force and all that stuff. And we talk about all the time the Hispanic Affairs Commission, all these different commissions, these different boards, and again, we're not talking about millions and millions of dollars, but we're just chipping away at the bureaucracy and getting rid of things. And for that bill to fail was horrible. But we do have some sources that tell us that that bill is going to come back. It was just a matter of timing.
It was like, I think a question was asked from Representative Skog to Representative Scott, if this bill should pass, when would the commission be over? And she said when it would go into effect, which would be July 1st of this year. And from my understanding, that might be a sticking point with a few folks, that they wanted that date to not happen so quickly, so that this commission could properly wind down over time. So we'll keep tabs on that. We need to make sure that these folks are doing what they promised and not be weak-kneed on this stuff, man. Weak-kneed on this stuff. All right, Brian, thanks again. Have a great weekend, my friend.
See you Monday.
Okay, and this past, what was it? Yeah, it was just yesterday. They debuted the Forever Idaho song at the in the Capitol, in the Senate. And we all got, if you were watching the program, we all got to hear this Forever Idaho song, and they alluded to other versions that are going to be out there of it. And we thought, how many awesome versions could there be of Forever Idaho? And my music wasn't working earlier, but we may have stumbled upon a few different versions of this. And so if we could take a moment to just...
From the rolling wheat fields of the Palouse to the white water runs on the Payetsaru. Golden potatoes, farmers stand strong. Cattle and dairy, they're feeding us all. From Boise nights with the bright city glow to Coeur d'Alene's calm waters below. Buddy, buddy waves with a smile so wide, sharing our story with American pride. So raise that flag, let freedom fly, echo liberty from plains to mountains high. America's heart beats red, white, and blue. 250 years of me and you, yeah, lift it up loud. Idaho proud, American. We've walked with Lewis and Clark on the trail.
Oh, listen to that crooner. You know, I'm not sure how many other versions of Forever Idaho are out there or will emerge. But every time we get a new one, we're going to share it with you. Folks, we have an event on Tuesday we want you to know about. It's not our event. It's the Idaho GOP. They're having an Article 5 convention, Good for America talk at the Lincoln Auditorium at the Idaho State Capitol, Tuesday, January 27 at 3:30. That's this coming Tuesday at the Idaho State Capitol at the Lincoln Auditorium. Robert Brown from the John Birch Society will be there to have a good old-fashioned discussion on the Article 5 convention. So if you are in the Boise area and you want to make your way over there, that's Tuesday, January 27th at 3:30. Very good. And then also tomorrow, I'll be here up in Kootenai County moderating the Kootenai County Town Hall for the Kootenai County elected officials. That's tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. And so be sure to come out and see me there and talk to your elected officials. All right. We're going to get out of here. It's the weekend. Thank you so much for joining us. Please share the broadcast, and we will see you next Monday right here on Idaho Signal. Take care.
This bill, I think, puts a stake in the ground that says we have a sovereign right to protect what's ours.